March 1, 1999. A screening room in London. Stanley Kubrick has just finished his final film. A story about a marriage, a husband and wife, a secret, the slow death of trust. He screens the finished cut for the studio executives, then for the two actors who star in it. Then he goes home. 4 days later, Stanley Kubrick died. The couple in the film were Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. They were married not only in the film but in real life too. Kubrick's final film, strangely, seemed to tell the story of their marriage. It was as if he had seen what was going to happen before anyone else. For 10 years, they were sold to the public as Hollywood's golden couple, the perfect love story. Magazine covers, red carpets, two people who seemed untouchable. But behind the image, something else was running. A system, a belief, a question nobody was allowed to ask out loud. Was this love? Or was it a controlled marriage? To understand the answer, go back to where it began. Daytona Beach, 1990. The set of a film called Days of Thunder, a movie about race cars and a young driver who never learned how to slow down. He was 27. He was one of the most famous stars in the world. She was only 22. She was a young Australian actress. She wasn't very well known in America. When they met, things were a little complicated. They both had different people in their lives. He was still officially married to his first wife, Mimi Rogers. She was also just getting out of her previous relationship, and then something clicked. The chemistry was so obvious that the film's director noticed it before anyone said a word. He watched the two of them and understood before they did what was happening. By December of that same year, they were married. Christmas Eve, 1990. A small ceremony in a mountain town in Colorado. No cameras, no press. Just two people who seemed certain they had found something rare. She was 23. He was 28. Here's the first thing worth noticing. She was young, very young, and in the early photographs she looks at him the way a person looks at the sun. With wonder, with gratitude, like someone who has been chosen, but who was doing the choosing. Because from the very first day, there was a third presence in the marriage, something older than both of them, something that watched. Tom Cruise was introduced to Scientology in the late 1980s. His first wife had introduced him to that world. By the time he met Nicole Kidman, he was no longer just an ordinary member. He had become an important figure. To the church, he wasn't just a follower either. He was someone valuable, maybe even something of a prize. Nicole was different. She was raised Catholic. Her father was a clinical psychologist in Sydney. She was curious, intelligent, quietly skeptical. Exactly the profile a closed system tends to view with suspicion. And so the question that would define the next decade was already forming, even though no one said it out loud. Could a marriage survive when one half of it belonged to the biggest star in Hollywood, and the other half belonged to the most secretive organization in Hollywood? For years, everyone only knew what they saw from the outside. First, they adopted a daughter, then a son. They bought homes. They walked the red carpets hand in hand. Everything looked beautiful in the photos. They seemed to be living a trouble-free life. But there was much more than what people could see. Keeping up that image came with a price. And in the end, someone was going to pay that price. In 1991, soon after the wedding, Nicole suffered an ectopic pregnancy. A pregnancy that could not survive. It nearly killed her. She spoke of it rarely, and only in fragments, as if the memory itself was something she was still trying to keep private. The family photograph from the outside looked complete. But behind closed doors, things weren't quite the same. The problems had already begun. Then came a film that would change everything even more. Stanley Kubrick was preparing to make Eyes Wide Shut. The film was about a married couple, a doctor and his wife. From the outside, they seemed to have a perfect life. But between them, there was jealousy, secrets, and doubt. The most personal film of his career. He cast a real married couple in the roles. The shoot became legend. More than 400 days of filming. The longest continuous film production of its time. Kubrick shot scenes over and over. He pushed, he isolated. He asked his two stars to reach into places no director had ever asked them to touch. The details of this operation stayed classified for years. If you want to be among the first to hear them when they surface, subscribe. Mossad's classified files open here. No, Fallen Icons files open here. Nicole Kidman later said the experience left them both raw. That playing a couple whose marriage was quietly coming apart, while their own marriage was quietly doing the same, was something no one had planned. Was Kubrick trying to tell them something? Or was he simply watching what was already there? But this was the real turning point in the story. The film wasn't the reason for what happened. The problems between them had simply become more obvious. In other words, the film didn't ruin anything. It only brought the cracks that were already there to the surface. The film opened in the summer of 1999. It divided audiences. It disturbed critics. It showed a marriage stripped bare. The jealousy, the secrets, the shifting power between a man and a woman who no longer trusted what they saw in each other. And somewhere inside that fiction, a real marriage was unraveling at the same pace as the one on screen. 2 years later, it was over. Los Angeles, February 2001. A marriage that lasted a decade ended with a legal filing. Tom Cruise asked for a divorce. The official reason was the same phrase Hollywood always reaches for: irreconcilable differences. When the news broke, everyone was stunned. Celebrity divorces were actually nothing unusual, but for years this couple had given the impression that they were living a different kind of life. Then an important detail came out. According to Cruise's lawyers, the marriage had ended months earlier, not in February 2001. The date they gave was December 2000. They had been married for 9 years and 11 months. So why did a 1-month difference matter so much? Because in California, a 10-year marriage was treated differently. Someone who had been married for 10 years could claim indefinite spousal support. If the marriage lasted less than 10 years, indefinite support wasn't really an option. Whether the timing was strategy or coincidence, one fact is hard to ignore. The marriage ended just weeks before the 10-year mark. And that raises a question that never fully went away. If the love was real, why did the ending look so precisely calculated? Here is where the story gets stranger. For years, reports and accounts had suggested that something else was shaping the marriage from the outside. Not just fame, not just distance, a system. Nicole Kidman never converted to Scientology. Her Catholic faith stayed. So did her skepticism. And according to multiple sources, including the book Going Clear by journalist Lawrence Wright, leaders inside the church did not trust her. The book alleges that David Miscavige, the head of the church, ordered her phone tapped. The claim has never been proven in court, but the pattern is documented. According to former members, the church never really saw Kidman as one of their own. She was always an outsider. At times, she was even seen as a problem that needed to be dealt with. No matter what she did, she was never truly part of that world. Think about how this affected their marriage. On one side was a partner at the center of an institution that influenced almost every part of his life. On the other was a partner who was always left on the outside and never truly accepted. How long can two people stay married when only one of them is allowed to know the truth? And this is where the one-by-one pattern emerges. Because Nicole Kidman was not the first, and she would not be the last. The first wife was Mimi Rogers. She introduced Cruise to Scientology. Then the marriage ended. The second was Nicole Kidman, the Catholic, the skeptic, the one who never converted. The marriage ended weeks before the 10-year mark. The third was Katie Holmes, a young actress who joined the church to be with him, and later, according to reports, ran from it. She filed for divorce in 2012, reportedly planning the whole thing in secret. 3 marriages, 3 women, and in each case, the church was never far away. So the question shifts. It was never only about 2 people falling in love. It was about what happened to that love once a system moved into the house. Now consider Nicole's side, what the marriage cost her. She put her career on the back burner for a few years. In photographs, she was no longer seen as an actress, but more as someone standing beside a famous star. She went through an ectopic pregnancy. Around the time of the divorce, she suffered another loss. According to reports at the time, she had a miscarriage. She rarely spoke about the marriage. And when she did, she was careful about what she said. Years later, when talking about those days, she simply said, "I was young." That one sentence carried the weight of everything she would not say. Think about the silence itself. A woman who spent 10 years inside one of the most publicized marriages on earth, and who has chosen for the rest of her life to say almost nothing about it. What does that silence tell? After the divorce, Nicole Kidman rebuilt herself. She won an Academy Award. She became one of the most respected actresses of her generation. Tom Cruise remained one of the biggest stars on the planet. The church stayed close to him. In time, he married again, And that marriage ended the same way, quietly. And with the church, according to reports, once again at the center of the story. So what actually happened between Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman? The honest answer is that no one outside the marriage can know for certain. Love is private. Control is private too, and the two are not always easy to tell apart, even for the people living inside them. What is documented is this: a young woman swept into a vast machine, a powerful man at the center of a closed system. A film that mirrored their life with unsettling precision, and an ending timed to the week. Maybe it was true love that ran its course. Maybe it was a marriage that was never allowed to be anything but managed. Maybe both things were true at once. That is the part the magazines never printed. That a marriage can be real and controlled at the same time. That a person can be in love and still be a pawn. That the truth can be both simpler and darker than anyone wants to admit. And the rest, like the marriage itself, was silence. If this story held you and like it, it helps the algorithm reach others who'd want to hear it. Comment the next icon you want opened.